Finally, at around 10:30, the prince was left alone. He had a headache. The last to leave was Kolya, who helped him to change his wedding costume for house clothes. They parted warmly. Kolya did not talk about what had happened, but promised to come early the next day. He later testified that the prince had not warned him about anything at this last farewell, which meant that he had concealed his intentions even from him. Soon there was almost no one left in the whole house. Burdovsky went to Ippolit's. Keller and Lebedev also took themselves off somewhere. Only Vera Lebedev remained in the rooms for some time, hastily turning everything from a festive to its ordinary look. As she was leaving, she peeked into the prince's room. He was sitting at the table, both elbows resting on it and his head in his hands. She quietly went up to him and touched his shoulder. The prince looked at her in perplexity, and for almost a minute seemed as if he was trying to remember, but having remembered and realized everything, he suddenly became extremely excited. It all resolved itself, however, in a great and fervent request to Vera, that she knock at his door the next morning at 7 o'clock, before the first train. Vera promised. The prince began asking her heatedly not to tell anyone about it. She promised that as well, and finally, when she had already opened the door to leave, the prince stopped her for a third time, took her hands, kissed them, then kissed her on the forehead, and with a certain extraordinary look, said, "Till tomorrow." So at least Vera recounted afterwards. She left fearing greatly for him. In the morning she was heartened a little when she knocked at his door at 7 o'clock, as arranged, and announced to him that the train for Petersburg would leave in a quarter of an hour. It seemed to her that he was quite cheerful and even smiling when he opened the door to her. He had almost not undressed for the night, but he had slept. In his opinion, he might come back that same day. It turned out, therefore, that at that moment she was the only one he had found it possible and necessary to inform that he was going to town. An hour later he was in Petersburg, and after 9 o'clock he was ringing at Rogozhin's. He came in by the front entrance and had to wait a long time. At last, the door of old Mrs. Rogozhin's apartment opened, and an elderly, decent-looking maid appeared. Parfen Semyonovich is not at home, she announced from the doorway. Whom do you want? Parfen Semyonovich. He's not at home, sir. The maid looked the prince over with wild curiosity. At least tell me, did he spend the night at home? And, did he come back alone yesterday? The maid went on looking, but did not reply. Didn't he come here yesterday in the evening, with Nastasia Filipovna? And may I ask who you are pleased to be yourself? Prince Lev Nikolaevich Mishkin. We're very well acquainted. He's not at home, sir. The maid dropped her eyes. And Nastasia Filipovna? I know nothing about that, sir. Wait. When will he be back? We don't know that either, sir. The door closed. The prince decided to come back in an hour. Looking into the courtyard, he met the caretaker. Is Parfen Semyonovich at home? He is, sir. How is it I was just told he's not at home? Did somebody at his place tell you? No, the maid at his mother's, but when I rang at Parfen Semyonovich's nobody answered. Maybe he went out, the caretaker decided. He doesn't always say. And sometimes he takes the key with him and the rooms stay locked for 3 days. Are you sure he was at home yesterday? He was. Sometimes he comes in the front entrance, so I don't see him. And wasn't Nastasia Filipovna with him yesterday? That I don't know, sir. She doesn't care to come often, seems we'd know if she did. The prince went out and for some time walked up and down the sidewalk, pondering. The windows of the rooms occupied by Rogozhin were all shut, the windows of the half occupied by his mother were almost all open. It was a hot, clear day. The prince went across the street to the opposite sidewalk and stopped to look once more at the windows. Not only were they shut, but in almost all of them the white blinds were drawn. He stood there for a minute and, strangely, it suddenly seemed to him that the edge of one blind was raised and Rogozhin's face flashed and disappeared in the same instant. He waited a little longer and decided to go and ring again, but changed his mind and put it off for an hour. Who knows, maybe I only imagined it. Above all, he now hurried to the Izmailovsky quarter, where Nastasia Filipovna recently had an apartment.